Inflation riders. So lots of different inflation riders here available. Asset care, 3 or 5% compound. Now you can do that over 20 years or lifetime. So 20 years, say you have a 55-year-old and they buy the 20-year inflation at age 75, the inflation is going to stop. So you can save a pretty significant amount of money by using 20 years instead of lifetime inflation. You save a lot for a reason, because in those later years, after 20, you see a pretty significant jump in that compounding. That's when the most money is made. So you can, if you need to get the premium down, the 20-year inflation option is a way to do it. Now, I have AOB or EOB in parentheses here because asset care is the only product where you can individually choose to put inflation on each. So you can choose to put inflation on the acceleration of the death benefit or not, and then on the extension of benefits or not. So you can put inflation on the AOB or not, and then add it to the EOB as an example. This is just another way to get down the price with the asset care product by eliminating the inflation on one or the other of these two silos that we talk about. Everybody else, every other carrier, you either choose inflation for both or not. MoneyGuard, 3% or 5% compound. Care Matters, 3% simple or compound or 5% compound. Secure Care, 3% or 5% simple or compound. So Secure Care, interestingly enough, with 5% simple, it's the only one who offers 5% simple. You should pay particular attention to this because 5% simple will actually outpace the 3% compound for about 34 years. So if you choose 5% simple, it's going to actually grow faster than the 3% compound for about 34 years, where they start to break even at that point. So 5% simple is going to give you higher growth than the 3% compound in most cases. So just take a look at both. If you're using Secure Care, see which one is better, and compare the pricing on each. Now, Smart Care does some strange things here because it's the only indexed UL product in the marketplace. So you can pick indexed inflation or 5% compound. Now, they've just announced that they are coming out with a 3% compound inflation option in July of this year. So we'll see what that looks like when they get it. But for now, you do not have a regular 3% compound, which is the most popular. You have to use the indexed or the 5% or no inflation at all. So let's talk a little bit about the indexed inflation option because it's different than everybody else. So if you're familiar with other indexed products like an indexed annuity or an indexed UL product, you look at something like the S&P 500 and it has a cap on it. Currently, it's at 9.5%. So if the S&P 500 goes up in your contract year by 20%, you'll get 9.5% growth in your inflation. If it goes up by 5%, you'll get 5%. So it goes up to 9.5%, and if it goes down, you get 0. So you can't lose money in this inflation option. The worst you can do is 0, meaning no growth. It'll just stay flat. All your benefits will stay flat for that year if the S&P goes down. But you can earn more than the regular 3 or 5% over time with this indexed option. Now, when we think about this, it's usually over longer periods of time where you'll do better, based historically on the markets and what the S&P 500 has done over time. As an example, with a 9.5% cap, you could expect over a 20-year period of time historically to earn about 6.5%. So you're doing much better than the 3% compound inflation that you would in one of the other fixed products. The problem is that 9.5% cap is not guaranteed. Every year, Bright House has the right to change that cap. And this product is not very old yet. It's only about 4 years old. So what we've seen is those products that were sold 4 years ago at a 9.5% cap are now renewing at about 8%. So they have the right to reduce that 9.5 on an annual basis to a new cap. And we've seen them do that. We've seen them reduce it again, now renewing at about 8%. So that 6.5 on average over the last 20 years that I quoted you is based on it staying at 9.5 the whole time. Well, it very well may not stay there. Now, so that, requires your client to take a little bit more risk if they're willing to do that. And again, historically, what it looks like is this will outperform, say, 3% compound over longer periods of time. So I think if I was recommending this, I would only recommend it to younger people. By younger, I mean people under the age of 60, as an example. So that 9.5% cap, again, is not guaranteed, but it is guaranteed to be a minimum of 3%. So they can actually take it down to 3% if they wanted to, based on what's happening in the interest rate environment. One more thought about this Bright House Smart Care product. If you're doing business in New York, listen closely. The Bright House Smart Care product is the only product in New York where you can add inflation on the AOB. The only other product that's available in New York is Nationwide, and they do not have inflation on the AOB, the first 2 years of your LTC benefits. So if you're selling products in New York, the Bright House Smart Care product is the product you probably will want to use, okay? So it's the only product in New York that offers inflation on the AOB. Finally, Care Forward, 3% compound, 20 years or lifetime, 5% compound lifetime. The reason I have 20 years highlighted for Thrivent is because you will see when I do the pricing comparison that it's a very expensive product. So if you're using Thrivent, one of the ways that you're going to get the price down is by using the 20-year inflation option. So just kind of keep that in mind when we do our pricing comparison in a little bit here.